All right, we're going to get right to it. How I increased my vertical leap from 27 inches during my senior year of high school to 44.8. Obviously, that's a big jump. There's a lot that went into it. Firstly, my name is Josh Holsop. I'm the Director of Sports Performance here at Clemic Performance Method. We are a 7,200 square foot sports performance facility in Somers Point, New Jersey. I've worked with probably 1,000 athletes at this point in my career, many of which were drafted, playing the NFL. A lot of them have gone on to play Division I and college sports in the NCAA and have had a lot of success. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey. From the beginning, the first thing online that I could find about increasing sports performance, moving faster, moving better, becoming a better athlete was all weights-based, right? There was nothing big in the plyometric or track or sprint world, which I didn't, come across until later. I started out with Westside Barbell, the conjugate method, rotating weights, learning that system. I read everything Louis Simmons that he produced, pretty much all the books, the special strength stuff, the bench program, the squat, all that type of stuff. And I figured, all right, let's just dive right into it. So I had a lot of success with box squats, and I had a lot of success with deadlifts and a lot of training, just weights and increasing my absolute strength and my mass specific force, which is MSF. And that in my head made a lot of sense. I was like, you know what? If I increase the amount of absolute strength I can output relative to my body weight, I should be able to run faster and jump significantly higher, which I'll be completely honest with you, it did change the way I moved and the power that I had within my body to, move myself forward and to run good routes and to create more forces and to create more stopping forces in order to slow me down while I was running routes. And it allowed me to jump a lot higher. But a big moment for me was I was training at the track with my guy Charles Hayden. He played at SMU, played at SHIP, and he was PCL 1 in the 100 meter. And I was like, all right, let's see how I run against a track guy, right? Like, there's no way that he squats as much as I do compared to his body weight. There's no way that he deadlifts more than I do. And, we ran, and in the first 10 yards, there wasn't a major difference. But after that, he just left me, like 2-3 steps left me. And he just looked so effortless when he was running. And I remember looking at my video and I was like, geez, man, like what's going on? How does this make sense? And I started to piece the puzzle together a little bit more and realize that, like, when you're in the weight room, right, like everything that you're doing is pushing through the heels. Your stability is within your heel. Your stability is not within the ball of the foot. You don't put anything into the ankle complex. So I was running on the ball of my foot, but I was pushing through my heel, which destroys the fascial connection, which destroys the body connection. And what that basically means is, like, your body or your engine is almost misfiring in a way. Like, it's taught to create power through the heels, but when you play sports, you're on the ball of the foot in order to move and bounce and use the ankles, the Achilles tendon, the ligaments, the fascia, in order to very efficiently transfer force from that foot up through the ground into your body and then move, your center of mass or your hips in the direction that you want to go. So once I figured out that disconnect, I realized in my head, like, okay, I have to start to train a little bit differently. And I'll tell you this, my vertical leap at the time of that, which was about a year of training, was probably a 35 or a 36. So I increased almost 10 inches off of weights. And I think that there's a place for GPP, general physical preparedness, and just building your body's output system. But I know now that it should be in conjunction or even lesser in the beginning phases when you use vertical leap training correctly and rate of force development and sprint work. And what I mean by that is, if you want to jump higher and you want to sprint faster, you should be doing more jumps and sprinting more. It's that simple, right? And then you can use weights as an aid or a supplement to be able to output more absolute strength within that time of training. And that's kind of what I did from there. So after that moment, I started to kind of push off of the weights a little bit more, meaning I was still doing them, but I wasn't doing them as frequently. And what a typical session would look like for me going into the weight room would be box squats, 5 sets of 2. I would do 5-minute break in between, so I'd load the bar up heavy, 93 to 95% of my max for 2 reps. I was pushing the limit every single day. I would use accommodating resistance, chains, bands, whatever. And I would get under the bar and I would hit 2 reps on a box squat, rack the weight, and then I would go sit down for 5 minutes, and I would stay within that ATP system, that phosphagen energy pool. I'd let my ATP fully return, sometimes 5, 6, 7 minutes, and I hit another set. And then I would go into my isolation movements, and I realized there too that again, it's important to isolate the muscle somewhat, but if you're doing a ton of isolation work, your body is again going to adapt to the stimulus. Everything has a cost. So now I'm working and I'm moving, and my body is moving in isolation, right? My bicep, if you can, see that easily, is like if I'm doing a ton of bicep curls, my body is working in isolation. I'm strengthening one specific part within my engine, but I'm not tuning everything correctly to fire correctly. So now I have strong hamstrings, I have strong quads, strong glutes, strong low back. Everything is strong, but it's not firing together. It's not firing in conjunction with each other. So I'm not efficiently able to jump higher. So I started to do a little bit of French contest training where I would do my box squats and then I would do my plyometric jumps. So I'd go from heavy to light. So I'd work that rate of force development, and that had some good gains to me. It got me up to about a 40-inch vertical leap. But how I jumped from 40 to 44 was by stopping weights, right? Because I got to the point where I was like, how much, I'm spending all this time in the weight room and I'm not getting much in return, which is the point of diminishing returns, right? I'm 175 pounds and I'm deadlifting 500 and box squatting 500 and I'm extremely strong. I'm doing good mornings with 225 and I can Nordic hamstring curl my body weight 20 times. Like, I'm as strong as I need to get. And if I wanted to add another 5 or 10 pounds on it, it would take months, you know what I mean? A month or another month or another month. And what that did was it would fry my central nervous system. My recovery would take longer and longer and longer. And when I would go out to the field or go out to sprint or go out to jump, I just didn't have the ability to contract fast. So from there, it hit my mind where it was like, okay, let's go less weights and let's start to get into more plyometric and sprint training. And that's when I met the founder of KPM, David Klemick. And when I got to Dave's gym, I looked around and I was like, there's no weights. It's just resistance cords. What are we doing here? Because it went against everything I was taught. And Dave has a track background and he trained with Chip Smith down in Atlanta, Georgia, who's the godfather of sprint, or the godfather of performance training in America here. He's trained 1,700 plus NFL players. He was the head of the NFL Alumni Academy. And I was like, you know what, wait. Dave trained with these guys, like there's something to this. And when I was sitting there at a 40-inch vertical leap, I instantly, within the first 3 weeks, I think I PR'd at a 41, 42. And I did zero weights. I was just all rate of force, every single session, every workout. And what that did for me, it gave me the insight to understand within my body that, again, this system that God created is meant to focus and run all together, right? If I give myself isolation, then when I go to do a compound or a big full body movement like a vertical leap or a sprint, the engine is not going to fire at the rate it should or the sequence that it should, because it was never tuned in sequence. It was never tested in sequence. So once I started to do these vertical leap, running jumps and standing vertical leap and a lot more sprint work, which was rate of force, my vertical leap jumped again. And so I'm sitting at a 41, 42 with Dave, which is a PR for me all time, very quickly early on. And that's when I kind of got into overtraining, because I just loved training so much and I was doing it 6 days a week. And I saw myself just drop. I remember there was one day I couldn't even hit like a 33-inch vertical leap. My body was so cooked just because I loved training so much. And I built my body up to the point where every workout I was going so hard I couldn't do much. You know what I mean? I just got to the point where I was dead. So I stopped training with Dave after that and I started coaching with him. And I had this epiphany one day where I was like, all right, if I want to increase my vertical leap, what is the weakest thing that I do? Right, when it comes to a compound movement, when it comes to rate of force development. And that was simple to me. It was sprinting. It was my max velocity, my max miles per hour. Now, I wasn't slow by any means, but relatively speaking, if I'm sitting there and I want to get to a 44-inch vertical leap, I'm tapped out on just isolating the vertical leap. There's not much more I could do. I was doing depth drops. I was doing depth drops off of 8, 10-foot boxes. I was doing dumbbell jumps with 40s, 50s in my hands. Like, I was extremely powerful in that one plane, in that one movement, in that one modality of vertical leap. So I went to sprinting and I was like, okay, if I can increase my max miles per hour to 24 plus miles per hour, my vertical leap will increase. I knew that for a fact, because if you can increase how fast you run, your central nervous system as a whole will function completely different. And that's what happened. So I spent about a month and a half getting up to 23 miles per hour, 23 and a half. And there was a really good summer day. I got a lot of sun in. And I went to go coach a training session, and I went to one of the kids. I was like, "Yo, I'm primed right now to hit my PR vertical leap. I just felt it. Because when your CNS gets built out to the point where you can feel and you can just turn it on and go, okay, we're firing fast, you know. So I went and I jumped and I hit 44.8 the same day I hit a PR on my max velocity. So everything was firing correctly. And that was, kind of the aha moment for me was, putting all of this together in sports performance training. And that's what we do down here in Summers Point at the actual facility. We see 6 to 8 inch vertical gains on all high school athletes that come in here for the first cycle. It never misses, right? And that's because we combine vertical leap, rate of force development, isolation, and application all in one. So what a typical training session looks like is you have 3 stations. You have your application area, which is basically your engine tuning sequencing station. That's when we do the sprint work, the 10s, the 20s, the max V, all different variations of that, working on mechanical advantage and the body working together as one cohesive unit, right? And then we have isolation, which is where we isolate a specific movement or a specific part to that engine, which is, it could be your hip, your psoas muscle lifts the knee. It could be your RSI score, your ankle complex, making sure it's stiff and strong so that when you have a big push into the ground, that ankle doesn't collapse. Instead, it basically becomes an immovable object and a spring. So the more force you put in, the more force you get back out. It could be your actual vertical leap, which is your push, because we use the vertical leap as our gold standard of testing for rate of force development. If you can jump higher, well then you're jumping faster. You're creating more force in a shorter period of time relative to your body weight. So vertical leaps and broad jumps are essential. And that's the isolation area. And then we have a fast twitch area, which is kind of connecting the central nervous system in a Marv Varinovich type of way where we're just firing extremely fast. That also means some hurdle work. That also means some mobility work. That also means, stuff that kind of keeps you healthy and going and keeps the system moving. But that's what we do, and that's how we're able to achieve such great gains. Now, as you get more advanced within your training, you have to start to think outside of the box more, and you have to be okay with letting go of things that you're very good at and very comfortable at, and then going towards things that are potentially your weak points, right? And for some people, for some athletes, that may be weights, right? Like you might need to go, okay, I sprint fast, I sprint hard, I jump high, I create a lot of force. Well, now, or I create force in a fast period of time. Well, maybe now I just need more absolute force, right? Maybe now I need to go hit the weights. And that's something that you got to think about when you're in this journey. But that's the basics of how I got to 27 to 44.8 inches on the vertical leaps. I'll tell you this, my favorite exercises to get you there, if I were to do it all again in the weight room, would be box squats for sure, deadlifts, variations of deadlifts. Now, people will tell you that they hate deadlifts. I'm just telling you what got me to where I'm at and what I like to do. If you don't like to do deadlifts, you need to get on a GHR and you need to strengthen the lower back. The lower back is a huge part of your vertical leap because that lower back being able to snap you back up and out into a complete straight line and do it fast is going to get you many, many inches, right? The posterior chain in general, the glutes, and that low back functioning together and correctly is going to give you a very high vertical leap. I would do a ton of dumbbell jumps and I wouldn't go too heavy, right? Most people think dumbbell jumps are like, oh, let me get 30s, let me get 40. No, start with 10s, 15s, and 20s. Rate of force, rate of force, rate of force. And what that's going to do is by holding those dumbbells is teach you how to drop fast. Okay, so the faster you drop, the faster snap that you can have back up within the fascial system, within that rubber band system of the body. Dumbbell jumps were phenomenal and were a staple for me. Depth drops were also a staple for me. And rotating depth drops with different dumbbells at different heights was amazing for me. Combo vertical leaps, so multiple vertical jumps in a row with dumbbells was great. And one thing I would add in when I was younger, looking back now in hindsight, would be more approach jumps. So giving yourself a run up to jump, a 1-step, a 2-step, a 15-foot run up into a jump and just going up as high as you possibly could to just get the body to sync and work all together as one. And that's something that I would highly recommend. We're going to be putting out stuff, videos like this. I'm going to try every single day to get out there. Comment, if you like the video, and just tell me what you want to hear, and I'll go off of all topics and we'll start just going through everything. So, till next time.